Vanilla Fudge returns to our area this Wednesday, the 25th of June, at the Bergen Performing Arts Center in Englewood. And I'm pleased to have Carmine Appice with us this morning, the drummer for Vanilla Fudge. Good morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, no problem, man. It's always good to talk to New Jersey.
I just was watching a video the other day of your performance, Vanilla Fudge's performance on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I remember watching it. We had a black and white television, so if you
Oh,
watch it now on YouTube, you see it in bright,
full
vivid color.
color.
And I have to tell you, you captivated me twirling the sticks. I could never figure out how to do that. You and Dino Danelli, I remember watching you guys, and I just couldn't do it. But at the age of what, 12, I'm thinking, boy, that looks really cool.
Yeah. Well, Dino actually was the guy I looked at. I looked at Gene Krupa, and then the rock guy, Dino. I knew Dino from before he was in the Rascals, and he always played like that and twirl the six, And I was liked it. And I did somewhat of that, but then I came up with my own way of doing it, I play with these fingers here so you can twirl it and still keep playing. Where Dino had to stop for a minute and go like bop and then twirl it, bop and then twirl it. But I can keep going bop and bop and bop like that. And I was just developing it in those days. Now it's like, I got it down there, and a lot of other drummers have taken that concept and using it. Um, but it's back then it was so everything was new. Everything was new, virgin, the kind of music, the radio was new. It was FM underground stations were coming up, and that's where like stations like you're on were born in those days. But it was different because they used to play albums in entirety, like the first Fudge album. They used to play the whole one side at a time, and it was good fun. And then we went on. If you ever saw the second time, we went on the Ed Sullivan Show. Then I had my big monster maple drums, same kit that I got John Bonham with the gong, and we had custom made shirts. I had a red lace shirt wearing it in those days. And the first time we went on, we had all our stuff we bought in England. A red velvet jacket I had, bought on Carnaby Street. I bought the shirt with the scarf, everything I had on, even the haircut was from Carnaby Street. And uh, and then as we got bigger, we started doing. We had a guy that made our clothes, and Jimi Hendrix loved our clothes so much that he went to our guy too. So it was just a close knit family of all the bands back then.
I remember listening to Vanilla Fudge, and I was introduced to your music through singles. So it was the shorter version of You Keep Me
Yeah,
Hanging On. It was the shorter version of Eleanor Rigby, that sort of thing. Nobody was doing what you guys were doing at that time. The extent, and not
yeah,
just the fact that you were playing longer, but Karma, and you know this because you were part of it. You guys made those songs your own.
yes. Well, that's what we tried to do in all the songs. We tried to marry the lyrics to the music. If you look at You Keep Hanging On, the original version was Set Me Free, Why Don't You? It's a happy song. But the lyrics weren't happy, you know? The lyrics were we call hurting lyrics, like you're in a relationship, it's over, you're hurting. Eleanor Rigby, the Beatles did an amazing job at it, but when we heard it, we thought it's real eerie, cemeteries and all that. So we made it eerie. And while doing it, we started, which we didn't know, we started what was called progressive rock, where progressive rock basically was going in and out of different time signatures, 4/4 into 3/8 into 6/8 and back, and we were doing all that crazy stuff. Didn't know we were creating something new as far as, you know, a new kind of progressive rock music, symphonic progressive rock music. And it was fun. We had a great time doing it.
We just, of course, lost Brian Wilson
Yeah.
recently. And, the comparison between the Beatles and Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys going back and forth, trying to top each other's albums and songs.
Yeah.
Was there a similar comparison for Vanilla Fudge?
Uh, Not really. No, I don't think so. Because we were doing stuff so different. But when we were doing that whole first album, yeah, we were, smoking pot and listening to the Revolver album from the Beatles. Yeah, that gave us a lot of inspiration. And you know, we, the rest of the album was crazy. I mean, that little illusions of my childhood that goes throughout the album, and it was really amazing that what we did basically went in the studio. What we did live in the studio, there weren't really that many like guitar overdubs. I don't think there were any guitar overdubs. You know, when the solo came, Vinny played the solo and the rhythm dropped out. It's like four-piece band. The only overdubs we did was vocals probably. You keep me hanging on was one take mono.
Wow.
That song's mono. Did you ever notice that?
I did, as a matter of fact, and I will point out because you made the comment about mono. If you do happen to go back, I'm talking to our listeners now. If you go back and you watch the Ed Sullivan performance, don't watch the one that has the single in stereo dubbed into the video
Right.
because it's not the same.
Oh, I didn't know
Watching the
that.
Yeah, the monaural mix from the TV is the one that you want to watch
Oh,
because that's the one where you can really see what you guys were doing at that point in
oh.
time. Mark and Tim and you and Vinny, it's a totally different performance. And that's the one that listeners have to go watch.
So there weren't two Ed Sullivan performances.
No, there weren't two performances, but someone has taken the stereo single and
Oh,
they've taken the video and they've combined it and it's just totally
I didn't
different.
notice that.
Are,
We never put the thing up. Other people put it up. So whoever put it up is making the money from the internet. We're not,
there you
you know.
go.
But it's the great thing about the mono was more powerful, you know. And if you listen to Take Me for a Little While, it's stereo. And then after the drum and bass groove, and it goes, Take Me for a Little While. But the ooh, when it hits that first ooh, it goes into mono.
I'm
And
going to have to go back and listen to
all of
that
a
now.
sudden, if you're listening with headphones, all of a sudden it goes into mono and everything starts walking. It sounds like everything's walking to the edges, but because it went into mono, it was, I didn't realize that until years later, because now I produce, I do albums, I record albums. I have the studio in my house. I have the drums set up over there, and I do a lot of recording. Like finishing up a new Cactus album that it's a Cactus Temple of Blues album. I did one last year, broke into Billboard charts at #3 for blues. So we go, well, let's do another one. So we're just finishing another one. I've done so many albums here and producing so many things over my life that I didn't realize what happened would take me for a little while until I really listened to it. And I said, wow, that was Shadow Morton, our producer, did that. We didn't know anything about recording. We just went in and played, you know. The first album was our stage show, part of our stage show. We had more songs. We had Season of the Witch, which ended up on our third album. We had It's Growing by the Temptations. We had so many songs that we didn't include on that album, but we were doing Shotgun.
You did that on the Ed Sullivan Show, as a matter of
Yep,
fact.
exactly. We did that. And that was a top single, top 20 single. At one point when we were the very first band to have a top 5 album without having a top 5 single or top 10 smash single.
Wow.
Keep Me Hanging On came out. It went to number 70. When the album came out, it broke in the charts at 200. Next week it was 33, and then went up and up. And we were in the top 5. I believe in front of us was the Beatles and a few other bands like the Doors or the Beatles. But we never had a hit single. And then that was like at the end, that was September of 67. And then a year later, Atlantic, we released The Beat Goes On, which was a bomb album. That was a bad idea. And the producer's idea, Armin Erdogan, president of Atlantic. We called that's the album that ruined our career, basically. It stopped the momentum. And then we did the third album, Renaissance, which is a good album. And that came out. And then they re-released You Keep Me Hanging On as a single. Now that went up to number 4. That brought all the albums up. So the first album was number 11. The third album, Renaissance, was probably in the top 30, right? The Beat Goes On was way at the end of the charts. And then, yeah, so that we had 3 albums and a top single on the charts. And then in '69, we released Near the Beginning, which had Shotgun on, which went up to, I don't know, number 18 or 17 single. And that brought that album up to, that was quick. It went up to Broken at, I think, 25, went to 15, and like to 11, then stayed there. But at one point, we were kicking ass.
Everybody knows you as one of the top drummers in rock, and you just mentioned the Near the Beginning album. If I'm not mistaken, Carmine, that was the album where you had a writing credit by yourself because the band had written some songs all together, but you had one by yourself, and you've written some songs over the years, including some hits that Rod Stewart had. How much
Yeah,
songwriting do you actually do?
I have 500 songs on ASCAP. Now, not me personally, but bands I've been in with Cactus, we all split the writing. Uh, Songs with Rod, we had a couple that were split the writing, and then the big ones, Young Turks and Sexy. Uh, I did solo albums with this guy, Fernando Perdomo, which me and him split all the writing. So then some songs I did with Pat Travers. We did an album called the Balls album, which we split the writing. And then there was a couple of songs that I wrote myself, a couple of songs he wrote himself. So I've been writing songs. I wrote some Christian songs lately too, because I became Christian like 7 years ago. I almost died. I won't get into that. Uh, and then I would go to this church and I'd write down all the lyrics and things they talked about. And I wrote 3 Christian songs that pretty much myself. I wrote all the music, the lyrics, melodies. I produced it here in my studio, but I don't know what to do with them. So I'm not in the Christian market, but they're really cool songs. But I've written so many songs, I just sold my ASCAP to a company, and they figured out I had 500 songs on ASCAP.
Wow.
It's a lot of songs.
You mentioned Rod Stewart. I know you have a project called Tonight's the Night celebrating the music and legacy of Rod Stewart. In
I
fact, you'll
do.
be here in New Jersey at a couple of different venues, I believe in September. Tell us about that project because
Well,
it
we're going to
sounds
be at the
very
Bergen.
cool.
We're going to be at the Bergen PAC also.
Hmm.
You know, well, it started like a couple of years ago when I went to see Rod down here in Florida, and went backstage and hung out with him. I went for a drink with him before that near his house, and I noticed that all the songs he got really amazing reaction on were a lot of the songs that I played on and I produced, and I helped him produce the vocals. I co-wrote the songs, played the drums, and my drums were very, very prominent on his music. Hot Legs and Feeling of Sexy and Young Turks and all these other songs that we did, like You're Insane and Attractive Female Wanted from the first album we did together. So I said, you know what? Years ago, I had a thing called the Rod Experience. I had a guy that looked like Rod, and I had guys that played with Rod, and we did a bunch of shows, and we went to China, and, Macau, and all over the place. Then it fell apart because it was too hard to get a rehearsal. Everybody lived all over the place. So a couple of years ago, I said, well, I'm going to start and do it again. I'll use the same singer, and then I'll put the music together with guys from here around Florida. So I did that. It took me forever to do that. And we did 3 gigs. In the 3 gigs, I realized it's not happening. Yeah, it's not happening. So then um, I went to lunch with Katra Reicherman, that played sax with Rod for 14 years in LA. She was a friend of mine. Went to lunch and I said, what are you doing? She goes, I'm playing with this guy, Rob Caudle, and in his Rod show. I said, well, how is he? He goes, he's great. And I was just getting mine going at the time. So he said, but he wants to talk to you about getting some gigs in Europe. He thinks you know people. I said, yeah, I guess. So he gave me his number. So the gigs in Europe didn't happen. So when I blew out my band, I called him. I said, hey, dude, you playing anywhere in Florida? I thought maybe I'll go check him out. He said, yes. He was playing 2 or 3 hours from where I live. So I went with a buddy of mine. He has a limo company. He has those big SUVs, the black
Hmm.
ones with the black window. So we went up to see him, and I'm watching him. I go, oh my God, this guy's like Rod lives in this guy, So I went on stage with him. I played, Passion. I played Young Turks. I played Hot Legs. I did a little drum solo, and the audience went crazy, you know. So after we came off the stage, he said, "Let's be partners."
Wow.
I said, "Let's do it." So we became partners, but I've been building it. When you looked at it before, it was like him and the band wearing black, and they would take, whatever gear comes with the gig. And I said to the band members, I said, "Are you guys a backup band? Or are you the band?" I said, "We're the band." I said, "Well, why don't you dress like the band?" I said, "Rod Stewart's band were flashy dressers. We dress with colors and like I said, Rob looks like Rod. He dresses, he does all the changes, he does all that stuff. So we need you to do that." So I started like handing out like some ideas. The guitar player looked a little old. He had like some balding going on here. I said, "Look, you should wear a Robert De Niro hat like he wore in Mean Streets, one of those hats, and some really flashy shirts." And he did. First gig we did like that, the agent that booked us said, "Who's the new guitar player?" So he said, "No, it's the same guy." So then I built up a video that goes completely behind us. Starts at the beginning of the show, introduces us on the show, and it goes from there to the end of the show, you know. And then we brought in some confetti. Everybody's looking cool now. And he had no merch. We started doing merch, and so now it's developing. It developed into a really, really good show. You know, it's the same energy and look of what Rod did in 1979 when I was with him when we did 6 nights at the Forum. A lot of energy. And Rob is running all over the stage. And I told the guys, look, Rob's in the front and you guys are here in the back. There's a whole stage in the middle there. You guys need to occupy, because when you looked at Rod in the old days, he'd have his arm around the guitar player and
Hmm.
it was really camaraderie on the whole thing. So now I got them all moved up. We got these air dancers that go off when you see at the car wash. When you do Ding Dong Sexy and the chorus comes, if you want my body, these things come up, you know. And then we got like we do hot legs, and then we go hot legs, and we got flames coming up. I mean, it's a real show. It's a real show. And he sounds and looks exactly like Rod. If you
He
go to
really does.
tonightstonight.net, right, did you go look at it?
I did. I
Right, he
did.
looks like Rod.
Yeah. Well,
Matter of fact, I emailed Ron. I said, we're doing this tribute. Catcher told him we're doing it. Showed him pictures of Rob, and he said, "Man, he looks like me. He dresses like me." And Catcher said, "He sounds like you." So then I emailed him. I said, I don't want to call this a Rod Stewart tribute. I mean, this tribute thing is so cheap. I said, "Do you mind if we call it Tonight's Tonight, show that creates the music and legacy of Rod Stewart?" Sounds better, right? So he said, "Wow, I'm honored." It's Rod Stewart saying that to me on an email. I said, "Well, I'm honored that you're honored." So we're friends, and maybe one day he'll be in the city that we're at, and maybe he'll come up and sing something with us.
That would be very cool. You
But
can
but the
check.
only problem is we sing it in the original key, and he sings a few keys down because he's like now he's got some problems going on with his voice. I feel bad because he wants to play until he can't play anymore,
You can
like
check
me.
out all the dates, whether it's Cactus, Vanilla Fudge, the Rod Stewart Legacy show on Carmine's website, carmineappice.net, correct? That's it, the
Well, a
website?
piece, a piece.
Okay. I want, well, we were talking about that because I know there's a big thing about how do you pronounce your last name?
Okay.
And
So
you
this is
said a piece or a peachy. Your
right.
brother Vinny has a different
Now, my older
pronunciation,
brother says a peachy. My brother Vinny says Appice,
right? What about your
and I
sister?
say a piece. My sister's she's married. Her
Well,
name's
what did she
nothing.
say?
Appice.
Okay.
That's what it used to be in Brooklyn. So when I went out on the road and when I reached Rod, when I joined Rod, he said, "You know what? We got to get one way to say your name because You're a piece, you're a pice, you're Appice, you're a peachy. You're like five different names. So what do most people call you? So most people in those days called me a piece. And I used to go, no, it's Appice. So I said a piece. So he said, so why don't we go with that? Because we're going to be playing these 20,000 seat places and you're going to do your solo. And I want to say, Carmine, whatever. So let's go with a piece. So it'd be Carmine Appice. I said, great. And then I was with Ludwig Drum Company, and they did a worldwide ad in every rock magazine that everyone wants a piece of a piece. All right. And I have it up on the wall here, actually. You know, this is like a little museum, and I got that. I got my proclamation from Los Angeles. I got my letter from Fred Astaire. I got some old Confederate drumsticks behind me. I don't know if you can see those. And again, the other side got all the gold and platinum records and drums, and it's just like our house down here is all glass, mostly glass and plasterboards. So there's not a lot of room to put stuff on the wall. So everything is on the wall in this house, in this guest house, you know.
Well, again, check
But
it out this Wednesday at the Bergen PAC in Englewood. Carmine, thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed chatting with you this morning.
and one other thing, we're going to be tonight's the night at the Bergen PAC also, on September 28th.